Hello everyone and welcome to class number 12 in American Literature in the summer course of 2020. So far we have offered an overview of American literature, the beginnings, the colonial period, the democratic and romantic period as well, and the democratic and the revolutionary writers including Washington Irving. And also we have offered an overview of the American literary movements, including Romanticism, Transcendentalism, and the differences between Romanticism and Transcendentalism as well, with the main figures and ideas of this school of literary tradition or literary production. And also we had an overview of realism, where people started or cherish the idea of portraying the reality as it is, okay, like a camera. And one of these people was, or one leading figure of realism is Mark Twain, and one of his masterpieces is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Today we are going to offer an introduction for this masterpiece in American literature. We've mentioned it, we discussed it in passing in the class on realism in America, but now and in the next classes we are going to focus on Huckleberry Finn as a founding text of American literature. It received much acclaim, not when it was published. When it was published, it was, as any groundbreaking book, it was controversial and it was banned from library shelves in certain places in America. But over time, it gained more currency, and in a certain point of time, a literary figure such as Ernest Hemingway believed that all American literature comes from one book, which is Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. You can see how important this text. And T.S. Eliot also said that Mark Twain said something, we'll come to it later. But before I go into the discussion or the overview of the text, I want you to be in keeping with me when I talk about Huckleberry Finn. Now, our main text here is Huckleberry Finn, but it's good to have a look at its sequel story, which is The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, which is also by Mark Twain, and both are like one book divided into two segments or two parts. I refer a lot to the interpretations of Huckleberry Finn that is edited by Harold, what's his name? Harold Bloom. Okay, Harold Bloom is a main figure in American literature, and he offers in this book analysis of certain topics of Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. It is available and you can download it from any website that can give books for free, or you can download books for free. And also, I will rely on this, Bloom's guides, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Okay? These are the main books I rely on when I analyze and talk about Mark Twain and his Huckleberry Finn. Are we exclusively dependent on these two books? No, we cannot rely only on them, because Mark Twain ended up like a whole genre on his own right. In America, you have Mark Twain studies, like literary studies. So you will have an awful lot of literature written on Mark Twain and his inventive way of using language and iconoclastic approach to literature, to tradition, to social dogmas, etc., etc. But for now, as beginners, you can opt for Harold Bloom Guide and Interpretations. Okay. Now I look at Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, giving an overview of what is there in the book, and then in the next class, which is the class 12, we will talk about themes. Here we are also going to talk about themes, and then we will go into certain segments from the book and analyze them in light of the current context at the time. Okay. Now you can see this is an imagined picture of Huck Finn. Okay, the boy. You can see that it seems that he had hunted a rabbit with the gun in his hand, and he is happy. He's not well dressed, and he is not civilized, as it were, because the word civilization with S is the word that he hates in the stream of events. Okay, when he always doesn't want to be civilized according to the way the society wanted him to be civilized. Why is this? We will come to discover later. Who wrote Huckleberry Finn? Mark Twain. Mark Twain comes from Missouri, which is the Midwest, and he is the first major American writer who comes from the Midwest, or who doesn't come from the Northeast. Remember when we talked about the leading figures of American literary tradition, most of them comes from the Northeast. Ralph Waldo Emerson, William Bradford, and Bradstreet, because these are the places that founded the United States. This is New England, okay? New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. All these are the states that are called the constituent states, okay? And in these states, literature flourished because it is the place where major cultural institutions were set up during the colonial and after the colonial time. Like big universities are now based on the north, like Harvard University, Princeton University, Rutgers University, New York University, Columbia University. All these major cultural and academic institutions are based on the north. Okay? Mark Twain's real name was Samuel Langhorne Clements. He was born in November the 13th, 1835, the night Halley's Comet flashed across the sky. Okay? Halley's Comet is the only comet visible to the naked eye, appears about every 75 years. This is, Mudhannab Halley. He grew up along the Mississippi River, quit school at age 12, so he is self-taught literary figure. And he died on April the 21st, 1910, as Halley's Comet again flashed through the sky. So what a coincidence. Twain's traveled a lot and wrote a lot, and he had good relationships with publishers and with intellectual circles at the time. And he came to Palestine, and we may contemplate his voyage to Palestine or to the Middle East, including Palestine, and his remarks on this place in his book, The Innocents Abroad. Yeah. So he wrote travel books, nonfiction like Innocents Abroad, Life on the Mississippi, and like historic novels, The Prince and the Pauper, and then Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. He also wrote short stories, The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras Country. The novel, you could see in the picture that we have two boys, and it seems that they are naughty boys. They are doing something. They are writing. They are not like ordinary boys writing on tables. Yeah. It was written I mean Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, after the adventures of Tom Sawyer. At the end of Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, a poor boy with a drunken father, and his friend Tom Sawyer, a middle-class boy with an imagination too active for his own good, found a robber's stash of gold, a lot of money, okay, a lot of fortune. As a result of his adventure, Huck gained quite a bit of money, which the bank held for him in trust. Huck was taken in by the widow Douglas, a kind but stifling woman who lives with her sister, the self-righteous Miss Watson. So we have new characters now. Widow Douglas, who adopts Huck, okay, and her sister, Miss Watson. Self-righteous, we are back to religious orientation in life. Mark Twain described the major theme of the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn as a sound heart and a deformed conscience come into collision, and conscience suffers defeat. Yeah, this is really outstanding theme. A sound heart, a heart that is pure, that is fine, that is loving and lovable, okay? That is innocent. And a deformed conscience, a deformed, distorted, distracted, okay? Full of problems, deficiencies, yeah? This conscience is not stable, unstable conscience. Now the heart and the conscience come into collision, okay? They come in, they collude, they fight, they quarrel, okay? Dispute. And who is defeated? Who is victorious? The heart is victorious and the conscience suffers defeat. Now he explains a sound heart, a good, honest heart. A deformed conscience, a conscience influenced by the laws of society. This is why it is deformed, it is deficient, okay? A conscience influenced by the laws of society and a sense of duty toward those laws. Now, the problem of laws when they are made by certain classes in the society, they will produce deformed conscience, whether to obey them at the expense of the marginalized, the vulnerable, or to disobey them in favor of the marginalized and the vulnerable. And we will come to Jim, the slave who escapes. Now, when Jim, as a slave, escapes, this goes against the laws. And now Huckleberry Finn is in Jim's company, or Jim is in Huckleberry Finn's company. Now, what is the obligation of Huckleberry Finn? To tell about him, to tell about Jim the escapee, the slave, or to hide him from authorities? We will come to this. This is an example of the sound heart coming into collision with deformed conscience, okay? And this is one form of conflict inside the text. The genre of Huckleberry Finn is satiric novel. Satire is a work that uses humor, irony, and extreme exaggeration to ridicule society in order to bring about change. This is the meaning of satire. It's about change. You, instead of giving advice to the society, you ridicule it, you attack it, okay? Narrator and protagonist, Huckleberry Finn is literal, realistic, practical. He is the narrator and the protagonist. A setting which includes time and place before the Civil War, roughly 1835, 1845. 20 years before the Civil War, where slavery was still valid. Place the Mississippi River town of St. Petersburg, Missouri. This is the Midwest, okay? The adventure continues down the Mississippi into Arkansas, okay? Mississippi from Missouri to Arkansas. Arkansas of one of the states. And you can see in the picture, now there are 4 people in the picture. Who are they? We will talk about this, okay? And you can see they are poor enough not to have a ship. It's just a raft, group of logs of wood, okay, combined together to make something that is able to float over water, okay? Raft. This is called raft. This, yeah, these الخشب هذا, okay? Themes can include, what does Twain teach us about each idea? Racism and slavery, we'll come to this. Intellectual and moral education. The hypocrisy of civilized society. What is the relationship between civilized society and hypocrisy? Yeah? You can ask whether civilization is an idea that can coexist with hypocrisy. In our minds, that civilization is a good concept. But why civilized people here are connected with hypocrisy? We'll come to this in the course of discussion. Racism and slavery. Although written 20 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, America, especially the South, was still struggling with racism and the after effects of slavery. Emancipation Proclamation was a proclamation made Abraham Lincoln, and which in fact liberated slaves by law. This is Emancipation Proclamation. Insidious racism arose near the end of Reconstruction. Reconstruction is an era, and this era started after the Civil War, which started in started and ended in 1860s. Oppressed blacks for illogical and hypocritical reasons. Twain exposes the hypocrisy of slavery and demonstrates how racism distorts the oppressors as much as the oppressed. The result is a world of moral confusion. The reasons that were listed for slavery are lame reasons. They cannot stand still. We need slavery in order to farm, to take care of our farms, to do plantations, to take care of livestock, and all these are not morally accepted. Okay? Intellectual and moral education. Huck is an uneducated boy. He distrusts the morals and precepts of the society that treats him as an outcast and fails to protect him from abuse. Huck questions his teachings, especially regarding race and slavery. In many instances, Huck chooses to go to hell rather than go along with the rules of the society. Hypocrisy of civilized society. Civilized to Huck means regular baths, uncomfortable clothes, mandatory school attendance, degraded rules that defy logic. Huck's drunkard, abusive father gets to keep custody of Huck because he is his natural father. The injustice of slavery that keeps Jim from his family. Yeah, in a certain moment, Jim is meant to be separated from his family because he is going to be sold. How does this stand as a moral act? Seemingly good people are prejudiced slave owners. Yeah. They are good, and at the same time, they are slave owners. How both can come together? You have a moral behind this. You have indoctrination that tells these people that slavery is acceptable. Okay? Terrible acts go unpunished, while lesser crimes lead to severe punishment. If a white man steals a big property, he might not be punished. But if a slave steals an egg, then he is in big trouble. These are the injustices inflicted on the slaves at the time. Motifs. What are motifs? Motifs are recurring structures, contrasts, or literary devices that can help to develop and inform the text's major themes. Like childhood, it permeates the text from the beginning into the end. It's about kids. Huckleberry Finn is a 14-year-old boy. Okay? Huck's youth is an important factor in his moral education. Only a child is open-minded enough to undergo the kind of development that Huck does. Lies and cons. Huckleberry Finn is full of malicious lies and scams. The lies are bad and hurt a number of innocent people. Yeah, because he's a child, yeah? Superstitions and folk beliefs. Jim believes in a wide range of superstitions and folk tales. Although Huck is reluctant to believe at first, many of the beliefs indeed have some basis in reality. Parodies of popular romance novels. The story is full of people who base their lives on romantic literary models and stereotypes of various kinds. Tom Sawyer, for example, bases his life and actions on adventure novels. Conflict and climax. Before I go to conflict, I need to make this comment before proceeding. All these are suggested historically by scholars when Huckleberry Finn is studied. But if you can find anything else, the door is still open for more interpretations and issues to be raised, okay? But it's good to know the literature that was made on Huckleberry Finn before, okay? The major conflict is Huck's internal struggle with his deformed conscience. Back to the sound heart and the deformed conscience. The climax, the most important point or the most complicated point in the novel, the point in the story where the protagonist's conflict is resolved, leading to the resolution of the story. The climax of Huckleberry Finn is when Huck decides to steal Jim out of slavery from the Phelps farm, his own moral code, despite the fact that he believes he will suffer in hell for it, society's teachings. Yeah, he was taught that if you help a slave to escape, then you will suffer hell. You will be tossed to hell. We will come to quotes now. That truck, that is trash. You can see from the outset that the language approach used by Mark Twain here is iconoclastic. Iconoclastic is to challenge the social and linguistic norms, okay, or the images or anything that the society formulated over time. The way Mark Twain uses language is really interesting. And instead of saying that, he uses the. He wants to portray the life of the kid according to the life of the kid. The way the kid pronounces words, the way he uses grammar, okay? You will find grammatical errors here, okay? They are made by purpose, on purpose, okay? The way pronunciation is done, the way sentences are structured and fragmented, in order to give you a live portrayal of real life. This is part of realism, okay? And this is why Mark Twain is considered to be one of the first persons who gave the American literature its identity, using the Americans' language, okay? Using the language Americans speak on the American soil, not the elegant, stylized language that followed the footsteps of the British writers at the time, okay? You can see how Mark Twain departed from these so-called elegant styles of the English writers in the mother country or in England. N-trash, N instead of and, is what people is, that puts dirt on the head, or they friends makes them ashamed. Okay? It don't instead of it doesn't. It don't make no difference how foolish it is. It is the right way and it is the regular way. All right, then I'll go to hell. It is good to watch movies that were produced on Huckleberry Finn. You will find a lot of movies, kids movies, adult movies, cartoons. Yeah, it was regularly and frequently produced in audio and video, so you can have a feeling and you can see how the language is used from these movies. Okay. Major symbol, the Mississippi River. I'm giving a signal to finish. I'll stop here. Please stay tuned so that we can go for class number 12, and then we will have a Zoom meeting. I'll announce it shortly. Bye-bye for now.